Since its creation over a century ago, L. Frank Baum's magical land of Oz has been immortalized in dozens of books, movies, TV shows, and musicals. The most well-known of said musicals is Wicked, which was loosely based on the 1995 novel Wicked: The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which reimagined the infamous villain introduced in Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz as an anti-hero. The musical premiered in 2003 and has since become one of the most popular productions in history, being seen by over 60 million people and grossing over $6 billion in ticket sales worldwide. This success brought the musical to the attention of Hollywood, who've been attempting to adapt it for the big screen since 2004, where it's been in development hell for the better part of 2 decades. Finally, in November 2024, Wicked the movie was released to theaters, and it's already being called the cinematic event of the year. But does it deserve that title? In today's video, we're going to be discussing the Wicked movie, including the differences from the source material, the best parts of the film, and where it failed to impress. Because this is going to be an in-depth review, be prepared for spoilers involving the Wicked musical, movie, and book, so don't say that I didn't warn you. And obviously, this is my opinion, so don't freak out if you don't agree. Into it. Wicked begins with a montage of events familiar to fans of The Wizard of Oz, namely the melting of the Wicked Witch of the West by Kansas farm girl Dorothy Gale. As news of the witch's undoing spreads across Oz, the Munchkins break out into a joyous celebration, and Glinda the Good soon appears in Munchkinland to set the record straight. She tells them how the witch, Elphaba Throp, was the product of an affair, and her unusual green skin led to her being reviled by her family, so she was instead raised by her talking bear nanny. From an early age, Elphaba shows a propensity for magic, causing her to be even more feared by those around her. Glinda then reveals to the Munchkins that the two knew each other in their youth, shocking the crowd. The film goes back to the past, where we see Glinda, then known as Galinda, arriving at the prestigious Shiz University, where she quickly ingratiates herself to her classmates. Elphaba is there with her father and younger sister, Nessa Rose, who hopes that by attending Shiz, she'll be able to get a fresh start far away from her troublesome sister. The other students are shocked by Elphaba's green skin, especially Galinda, and she and Elphaba instantly take a dislike to one another. Although everyone else seems infatuated with her, Galinda fails to impress Shiz's headmistress, Madame Morrible, a sorceress who has power over the weather. Morrible coldly rejects Galinda's request to join her sorcery seminar, shocking the young woman who's used to getting her way. During the opening ceremony, Elphaba accidentally reveals her magic powers to the entire school, drawing Madame Morrible's attention, and she offers to enroll Elphaba at Shiz, saying that it might be her chance to meet the Wizard of Oz. Elphaba accepts, as she hopes that the wizard might be able to grant her greatest wish, to be rid of her green skin. Because of a misunderstanding, Elphaba and Galinda become roommates, and the two find themselves constantly butting heads. Because of how she appears to the outside world, the rest of the school sides with Galinda, and Elphaba is unable to make a single friend. In one of their classes, Dr. Dillamond, a talking goat, explains how animals used to be accepted everywhere in Oz, but in more recent years, they've been blamed for the growing problems in the kingdom. During this presentation, he discovers a nasty message on his blackboard, which says animals should be seen, not heard, shocking him and putting an end to class. While practicing her magic with Madame Morrible, Elphaba discusses how this sort of discrimination is unfair, and she gets so riled up that she has another uncontrolled show of power. Later that evening, she follows Dillamond to his home, where he's holding a secret meeting with a group of other talking animals, telling them the rumors that he's heard of animals losing their ability to speak. On her way back to Shiz, she bumps into Prince Fiero, a recent transfer who's taken aback by Elphaba's disinterest in him. At school, however, everyone wants a piece of the prince, including Galinda, and that night Fiero convinces the entire class to go with him to the Ozdust ballroom. Boq, a munchkin who has a crush on Galinda, asks her to dance with him, but she brushes him off by suggesting he ask out Nessa Rose instead. Unaware of Boq's true intentions, Nessa Rose falls head over heels for him, and tells Elphaba how grateful she is for Galinda's help. That night, while getting ready, Galinda gives Elphaba an old hat that her grandmother made for her, and tells her that she should wear it and come out with them. At the Ozdust, Madame Morrible gives Galinda a training wand, telling her that at Elphaba's request, she'll be allowed into the sorcery seminar. Suddenly arrives while wearing the hat, and is quickly mocked by the other attendees, but Galinda, out of guilt and gratitude, dances with her, mending their relationship.
That's not nice, so Glinda's kind of a little mean girl.
Giving Elphaba a makeover so she can become popular. At school the following day, Dr. Dillamond announces his forced retirement, as the school board has outlawed animal professors. His replacement arrives soon after and shows the class a new contraption, a cage that will prevent animals from talking. Elphaba has another magical outburst, making a bunch of poppies spin around the classroom, putting everyone to sleep except Fiyero, who grabs the caged lion cub. The two release the animal into the forest, where they share a special moment, but Elphaba attempts to squash her feelings by telling herself that Fiyero would never be interested in a girl like her. Elphaba is later invited to the Emerald City to meet the wizard, and she brings Glinda along with her, who has shortened her name in shallow solidarity with Dr. Dillamond. They have some fun in the Emerald City, where they watch a show that tells the story of the wizard's ascent to power, having arrived randomly via a hot air balloon and being able to read the ancient Grimmery spellbook, fulfilling an age-old prophecy. They finally meet the wizard, who tells them of his plan to build a road across the kingdom that leads to Oz, with Glinda suggesting he paint it yellow. The wizard then asks Elphaba her wish, but instead of changing her skin color, she asks him to help the animals in Oz. Madame Morrible suddenly arrives, and she and the wizard convince Elphaba to read from the Grimmery. She unintentionally gives the monkey guards wings, pleasing the wizard and Morrible, who plan to use them to spy on the residents of Oz. Elphaba realizes the wizard is a con man with no real power who hopes to further subjugate the animals, so she takes the Grimmery and flees. Morrible spreads a message throughout the city, calling Elphaba a wicked witch who intends to destroy Oz. Meanwhile, Glinda and Elphaba have hidden in the palace's attic, where Glinda tries to convince her friend to go back and hear the wizard's explanation. Elphaba refuses, deciding to put an end to his evil plan, even if it makes her the villain in the public eye. Glinda bids her a tearful farewell, and Elphaba uses the Grimmery on a broomstick, giving herself the power of flight, and she escapes from the city and heads west. At the end of the film, we see Glinda being comforted by Madame Morrible, students fleeing Shiz University in a panic, and Nessa Rose listening to a message calling Elphaba the enemy of Oz, shocking their father, who collapses. Although the Wicked musical is inspired by the 1995 novel, there are some pretty major differences that help make it more palatable for mainstream audiences. One of these changes is Elphaba's conception, which in the book is implied to be not so consensual, with the green elixir causing her mother to fall unconscious, whereas in the musical, it's framed more like a drunken affair. Even though the movie is obviously an adaptation of the musical, some small part of me still thought that they might take it in this darker direction. I know that would have made them lose their PG rating, but I always thought it was a shame that there weren't more levels to the wizard's wickedness, because yes, he's Elphaba's real father, which isn't really a surprise considering the mysterious lover's voice is instantly recognizable as Jeff Goldblum. Although it won't appear until Wicked Part 2, Wonderful is my favorite number in the entire musical, and based on his performance so far, I don't think Goldblum will disappoint. I just need him to really lean into the manipulative sleazeball vibes. It's what makes the song so fun. Although he's an important character, Fiyero in the musical is pretty one note, but thankfully he's a lot more interesting in the movie. Although he still starts off as a shallow and flirtatious himbo, we get the sense that there's more to him than meets the eye. And I like that he and Elphaba actually meet before the Ozdust Ballroom, since it sets up the change in their relationship more clearly. Even though they're two sides of the same coin, Galinda is a people-pleaser who's more than willing to change herself to be accepted by others, whereas Fiyero is more of a rebel, wanting to be accepted by the people who see him for who he truly is, which is something you kinda miss in the musical. Jonathan Bailey is a charming guy, so it doesn't surprise me that he's able to pull off this swoon-worthy character, but he also brings a vulnerability to Fiyero that I think will make his arc in the second film all the more heartbreaking. Unfortunately, Nessa Rose and Bach's characterization is barely improved upon, which again is pretty disappointing considering how important they are. Nessa's personality is essentially boiled down to shyness and embarrassment, which makes having a green sister with magic powers incredibly inconvenient, and I feel like I wanted to see more guilt-tripping instead of woe is me from her. Like Elphaba, she also wants to be a normal girl, so when a chance at love arrives, she latches onto it. Considering she has no problem scolding Elphaba, it would have been nice to see her get a bit angry at Bach at the Ozdust, instead of just sounding dejected. It'd be a good way of hinting that there's a darkness lurking inside of her, which is a pretty important setup considering she later takes away the Munchkin's rights, so Bach can't leave her, and then turns him into the Tin Man as punishment for being in love with Galinda. They somehow managed to make Bach even less interesting than his stage counterpart. He's just some guy that's in love with Galinda and insecure about his height. and the latter is actually pretty silly, since he's not even that short compared to the rest of the cast.
I mean, he's
in
not
the musical, he's part of Galinda's posse,
that short
so we can infer
for
that his
a
crush grew over
munchkin.
time and from being in close
The
proximity to
munchkin's
her.
supposed to
Whereas
be
in the
really
movie, we
little.
meet once at the beginning, where he already seems to have a bit of a crush,
But
and then the
this
next
is
time they're
an
together, he's asking her to
adaptation,
the dance.
so
I would have liked to have
they
seen him
got their
around
own
just
rules.
a tiny bit more, even if it meant carrying Galinda's books in the background or trying to sit near her in class. But I guess Fanny and Shen Shen were more interesting sidekicks. One change I actually did appreciate is that they never have Bach get fed up with Galinda. He's totally whipped. And it creates a great parallel between him and Nessa, as they're both in love with an idea, not the actual person. Unfortunately, the film's weakest link is Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible. In the musical, she's extremely over the top, which definitely wouldn't have translated well to the big screen. But I think they overcorrected to the point that she's uninteresting. Sure, she's elegant and composed, which definitely sells the reverence the other characters show her, but it doesn't really make her very imposing.
Oh, she played it too understated, according to this lady.
But she's so cold towards her that it's kind of surprising, especially since at the end of the day, she's still a teacher. I just feel like I wanted a sort of motherly vibe from her so we could see her dote and spoil Elphaba, while keeping Galinda at a distance. It'd not only make her switch in the second film more apparent, but would be a better reversal of the two girls' home lives, helping us understand why they're both so desperate to please her. Also, with the cast being made up of vocal powerhouses, I'm afraid that Yeoh's singing was really underwhelming, and I'm not sure how she's going to pull off the more difficult numbers in the next film. Cynthia Erivo is 37 years old, and I won't lie, I didn't think she'd be able to pull off a teenager, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Even though she puts on a brave front, Elphaba still doesn't have the confidence of an adult, and the moments when she gets flustered or embarrassed are really quite charming. This sensitivity also makes Defying Gravity a lot more powerful, since you literally watch her come into her own over the course of the song, and I had chills the entire time. Overall, just a really likable character, which is kinda what you need for a protagonist whose reputation you have to change. Now this is going to be quite the controversial take, but I'm not the biggest fan of Idina Menzel's Elphaba.
What?
Yes, I know she originated the role, but I never thought that her voice was a good fit for the character. I felt the same way when she voiced Elsa as well, and it's one of the reasons I was never able to get into the music of Frozen.
Broadway
legend. I do love her in Rent, though. Cynthia Erivo is a much softer soprano, which I think works way better for the character. Since she isn't belting everything, there's more nuance to her musical performance, and I feel like you're able to pick up on Elphaba's vulnerability and excitement more clearly. Galinda is probably the most over-the-top character, which I actually think is a great choice since she brings some much-needed comedy and theatricality to scenes that are played straight. I'd seen Ariana Grande in Victorious years ago, so I already knew that she was funny. But in Wicked, she was firing on all cylinders, getting laughs basically every time that she was on screen. And a few of the moments that stand out to me were when she's flipping her hair on the train platform, when she nearly faints after being ignored by Madame Morrible, when she tries to use her magic wand for the first time, and when she and Elphaba are sharing their secrets. Even though Grande leaned into the obvious parts of the character, like her bubbliness, vanity, and superficiality, she also gave her a bit more edge by highlighting her cunning, competitiveness, and insincerity. And within minutes, you understand that Galinda is playing for is her chemistry with the rest of the cast. It honestly seemed like she brought out the best in each of them, and whenever she wasn't there, you were painfully aware of it. Another highlight of the film is its choreography, which comes courtesy of Christopher Scott. He combined a variety of dances like tap, hip-hop, and jazz, resulting in a fun and unique style that looks just as fantastical as Oz itself. Dancing Through Life might even be one of my favorite dance numbers of the last decade, because my god, Jonathan Bailey is giving 200%. The only time the choreography didn't work for me was when Elphaba begins dancing at the Ozdust Ballroom. Now, Christopher Scott had said that they didn't want her to be an obviously bad dancer. After all, she's still a well-brought-up young lady from a good family, but I felt like it didn't fit the character or the scene. Dancing as a sort of FU is fine and all, but instead of a new dance that she seemingly created, why not have her do the same dance that we'd already seen everyone else do? That not only showed the audience that deep down she does want to fit in, but also allowed the solo dancing sequence to be shorter, because it drags on for so long that it goes from awkward to boring. One of the reasons I was initially skeptical about Wicked was its visuals, as almost every trailer I saw lacked the magic I was looking for. Thankfully, on the big screen it worked out, And while not the Technicolor marvel of the 1939 film, it was definitely a breath of fresh air when compared to the gloomier fantasy projects of recent years. Although there's still a good deal of VFX, the production made a bunch of real sets for Munchkinland, Shiz University, and the Emerald City. And the fact that the actors are actually interacting with things, and not just a bunch of blue screens, makes Oz look and feel real. And there were multiple times when I just had to sit back and say, wow, that's beautiful. However, there was one thing that really bugged me, which was the lighting. When the characters are in a closed set, everything is fine. But when they're outside or near a window, everything is backlit and blown out. It's so harsh at times that it not only takes away from some of the amazing sets, but even the performances. Say what you will about old Hollywood, but at least they made sure you could always see the fun Easter eggs sprinkled throughout the movie. But honestly, I don't want to mention them in this video, so you can still have something to look forward to if you haven't seen the movie yet. My only note is that they somehow managed to do the impossible, which is being referential without being cheesy. Disney should take notes. As you can probably tell, I really enjoyed Wicked. And if there's one movie you should go out of your way to watch in theaters, this is it. The sequel is set to be released next November. And if it's even half as good as the first was, then we're in for a treat.
It seems like she really did enjoy the movie, and it looks like it's going to be a good one.
Don't forget to like and subscribe,
but
and I'll see you
wish
soon.
I liked
Bye.
musicals to go see it in person, like in the theater. But I'm going to have to wait to see it at home. But it looks like it's going to be good. And I like the little insight she gave to me. That way I know kind of what to expect. And I don't worry about spoilers. If it's good, I'm still going to enjoy it. But thank y'all for watching. See you next time.